As you hopefully have seen before, if yours doesn't look like mine, that's because you have a different layout. There are several different default layouts here in the Windows Layouts menu. 2x3, 4x4 split default. This is my custom layout that I call Jack's layout, tall and wide. You might want to arrange yours like mine. This is the way I'm going to have mine, and if you're following along with me, it's usually nice to have things in the same place as me so that you're looking in the same place on your screen as what you're seeing up here, but it's up to you. The way this works is you can drag things around wherever you want them. You can put them as other tabs of other things, but I have my scene and game and asset store tabs up here in the upper left. Below that I have a project tab, which has all your like file structure, your assets, and so forth. And then on the right hand to the right of that, I have a console tab. Project tab is where you would keep all your assets, your game objects, your scripts, your materials, your textures. And console is where things will print. Or it'll also display errors if you have any build errors. Okay, and then we have over here, we have above that and to the right of the scene window, we have the hierarchy. This is hierarchy is list of all your game objects, their children, and the components. Clicking in the hierarchy loads information about the game object that you have highlighted over here in the inspector. We're all having to plug in at the same time. I got to plug in too. So the inspector is where you can change properties of the game object that you have highlighted. Ooh, just barely made it. All right. And there's, in the inspector, each game object, as you can see, all of these are game objects. Some of them are physical objects. Some of them are not, like a camera is not necessarily a physical object. But it's very important because it's what the game sees when you play it. A directional light, that's not really a physical object, but it's what lights things in the scene, right? But all of those are considered game objects. And the game objects are exposed in Inspector, and in Inspector you can see the components of those game objects. Every object has a transform, and that's its position in world space in your scene window. So where it's located. You can drag things around manually, like this, and you can see that X value changing as I drag it around. A lot of times you're going to want more precision and to just put things numerically, like I want this camera at X0, Y1, Z negative 10. Okay? So everything has a transform, and then everything has some sort of component to it. In this case, there's a camera component in the camera. Duh. And that component has its own parameters, right? And you can change those parameters in Inspector. It also has an audio listener, which we won't really be using. And you can also add components. A lot of times you'll be like adding a script or maybe a mesh or something. Like if I wanted this camera to have a physical presence, I could put a mesh around it of a sphere or a capsule or something, and then you could actually see the camera in game space because it has a mesh associated with it. Let's not do that right now. Let's just leave it the way it is. Console tab, we talked about that. Projects tabs. All right, so project tab, like I said, this is where you can store your game assets. By default, it only gives you one folder to put things in called scenes. I mean, you could put it just in the plain assets, or you could put things in the scenes. And so far there's a sample scene, which is what we're working on right now in the scene. Many projects have multiple scenes. Each scene can have completely different game objects. It's like a whole other game. Or in a lot of times in games, it's like the next level is a different scene, and when you've completed one level, it loads the next scene, right? In our AR projects, a lot of times there's just going to be the one scene because there's not a lot of levels and stuff in AR. There could be, like if you wanted to make a game that had levels, that would be awesome. It's probably more complex than you'll need to do for this class. But that's scenes. Now, it's very smart to organize your assets into folders that you can create yourself. And there are some kind of like standard practices as far as the folders you'll want to have. It's up to you. You're the developer, so you can arrange things however you want. But I find it really helpful to put things in specific folders so you know where they are and you don't have to hunt around for them. So the folders I like to have, and you just right click and say create and folder. I like to have a scripts folder. No, come on, let me rename it. There we go, scripts. Create folder, a prefabs folder, create folder, a materials folder, create folder, and a textures folder. If I had sounds in this project, I'd probably want a sounds folder as well. I'm not going to have sounds in this project for the time being. So now we have those. We're going to want to, what are we going to do? We want to, we're going to create a simple AR experience. We're going to want a game object. Let's create a game object really quick. So you can right click over here if you want in hierarchy and say create 3D object. Let's start with a cube. And it gives us a cube. If you zoom in, it doesn't look like it at first, but this cube is actually halfway underground, you can see. So we're going to want to change its position to be up by half. So right now it's at, so if this was a 1 by 1 by 1, I could say move this on the Y up 0.5, and now it should be sitting right on the ground plane. Right? Now in AR and in a lot of things that have a physical world presence in Unity, the units are meters. I mean, other than that, they're just arbitrary units. They mean whatever you want them to. But by default, this scale is meters. So if I put a cube that is 1 by 1 by 1, that's going to be 1 meter or 3 feet wide in real space. So you probably won't be able to see the whole thing with your camera until you back way the heck up. That's a little bit big. Let's make it smaller. Let's make it like 0.1 by 0.1 by 0.1. So that's like a little centimeter, I guess. No, decimeter, 10 centimeter cube. And then change this Y from 0.5, because now it's way up in the air. Change that to 0.05. Where did that go? I accidentally moved it. Transform, there we go. 0.05. That should put it back down on the ground plane. Okay, so if we deployed this to our phone right now, we wouldn't have an AR experience. We would just have a picture of a cube. You would see it, maybe you'd see it in the camera view. If I go to game view, there it is. It's this tiny little white cube really far away, right? So that's not, and it wouldn't react to you moving or anything. We actually have to add the AR stuff to our project for it to work, right? So let's do that. I'm going to skip past setting up your Android and iOS for the time being. We'll come back to that. Okay. All right, so we need to, in order to add the AR stuff to this, get out of game view, go back to scene view. We need to add the AR Foundation packages that we'll need to make this work. So go to Window, Package Manager, and that'll bring up the Package Manager. And then you're going to want to also, over here on Advanced, you're going to want to click on that and say Show Preview Packages. That will show you things that aren't previews still too, that aren't fully done yet or haven't had an official release yet. Because a lot of the AR stuff is still kind of bleeding edge, not even official release. All right, so then we're going to look down here and we're going to want to add AR Foundation. So 2.02 is fine. Do you have AR Foundation in there, Sai? In your package manager? What? Yours is what? 1.5. You only have 1.5 because you have 2018? All right, when on the preview, if you click down, is there any 2.0 or something? If you click on this arrow, okay, it's all right. Right, yeah, it's the Unity that you're using, which is why I want you to have 2019. I think for just today's class, it'll be fine that you're using, because we're using the base nothing in this thing. But by next week, I want you to have 2019 so that you can use AR Foundation 2.0, because the plane detection methods have changed between 1 and 2, and so I want us to all be on the same page of what plane detection we're using. Okay, but for today, if you only have AR Foundation 1, that's fine. All right, let's go ahead and click on that and then click Install. And it should download things. It'll take a minute. And then when it's done, it'll put a check mark next to the AR Foundation when it's done doing its thing. And there. I don't see my check mark. Oh, I still have a spinning wheel. Spinning wheel. Got to go round. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. And I think it automatically installed AR subsystems at the same time for you guys. Great. So we got that. And now we're going to want, if you have an iOS device, you're going to want to install ARKit XR plugin. It shouldn't be. You should have ARKit XR plugin. If you have... No. It's here in your packages.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Right here.
That's why.
Yeah, no. It should already the ARKit XR plugin. You have packages? You have the package manager? That's fine if you have the preview. Okay. You don't have AR subsystems? Let me see what you're saying. Okay, ARKit XR. You have it. Did you change this to... It might not matter for today.
ARKit face tracking.
That's only if you have an ARKit 3 capable device. Can you find ARKit? Yeah, you got ARKit and you got AR Foundation. Okay, I think that's all you need. We'll see. Let's wait till we have a problem before. Right, so have you found yours? Okay, so go to Window, Package Manager. It might be behind this. Weird. It's like that. preview packages in use. Right. Oh, that's because you have a preview package in use. It's just warning you that you're using. Yeah. Her preview package, or her package manager is gone. Yeah, restart. Okay. Okay, so if you have AR Core, if you have an Android device, make sure you install AR Core XR plugin. You can install both of them. If you don't have an Android, there's really no point in doing the AR Core. I'm going to install both of them because I might deploy onto this. I might deploy onto this. Okay. So, come on, spinning wheel. Stop spinning. Once that's done, you can close your package manager. And what we want to do now is we need to, in order to add the functionality for it to do that visual odometry, that is called AR session in Unity, in the Unity Foundation program. So you can go down, if you right click on the hierarchy to add an object, you'll notice there's a new thing here called XR. XR is like AR/VR, so they call it XR. And add an AR session object and an AR session origin. What do you mean? There's no AR session? Object. There is no object. There's AR session and AR session origin. Okay? AR session, I believe, is the core functionality for it to do augmented reality. AR session origin adds the actual AR camera to your object. So if you notice, when you have an AR session origin, if you open the hierarchy, you drill down into this object, there's a child object called AR camera, right? That's because AR comes with its own camera because it's not using the main camera because the main camera doesn't move unless you script it to move. And this AR camera is automatically scripted through scripts down here that you can see in your inspector that works with the visual odometry to figure out where your camera is in the space. So you don't need this main camera anymore because we're going to be using this camera. So get rid of the main camera. Right click on it and say delete. It's gone. All right, now AR camera, you can, I should have said, notice that the main camera was tagged on the inspector as main camera. Now that we only have, this is our only camera, we need to tag this as our main camera. So over here on AR camera, which is the child object, not the AR session origin, but the actual camera, tag that as main camera. I don't think it would really matter in our coding for today whether you had that tagged or not, but that is the common practice you want to get into. It changes kind of how you can reference the camera in coding, and if you have it tagged as main camera, instead of having to figure out what it's called and everything, you can just say, I'm talking about the main camera, and it will point to this camera. Yeah. All right. So now that we have that, and we have an object, what do we have to do? Well, we could deploy. What time is it? 3:23. All right. So now I would deploy. Do I need to do any scripting? I don't think I have to do any scripting yet. Yeah, no. Yeah, we don't have to do any scripting on this. So this first day, this is basically all we want to do is we now have everything we need to see this cube on our phone, provided that we have the means of putting the application on there. Okay? So in order to put the application on there, we have to be able to set it up properly to deploy to an iPhone or deploy to an Android device. So let's see. We need to set up the project settings. All right. So go to Edit, Project Settings, and then click over here on the Player tab. Okay? And then you'll see down here, there's 3 different tabs. We're going to start with the iOS settings. And so this will be for iPhones and iPads. And then this one here is a little Android guy. And so that would be Android settings. Let's start with the iOS settings. So click on the iOS settings. And then what we're going to do is we need to first... Yes. Why not?
I just have settings for PC and Mac, and I have it open and exactly all settings.
Okay, so in your... Let's see. Okay.
Well, it's fine.
No. It's what. This is the thing, and you're not the only one. So there's where I think I ran into this in my notes. Let's see. So yeah, when you created the, I think there's a way to. What is it? Project settings. No. Well, okay. Maybe in mine it's in under this hub. You can go into the project and you can. Let's see. Do you have hub? Okay, great. I think in the hub here, advanced project settings. Maybe it is. No. Installs. Maybe that's it. There we go. So go to down here to installs and click on add, and add, maybe you have a list there for add modules to your installs. There we go. And then so over here on the right you click on installs and then you hit next and then you say add modules to your install, and you'll need to add Android or iOS build support.
You can do that without having it installed.
Yes.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
So, do you need Android?
No, if you don't have any Android, you don't need to do any Android stuff. I will say that I was impressed that I think once you do the plane detection, it doesn't matter as much. But what we're doing today, where we're just doing the VIO with an object floating in space, my Android locked the object way better, and my iPad, it kind of moved around a little bit and got confused. So I thought the odometry on my device is better than this iPad, even though this iPad has a way more powerful processor inside of it. Okay, so were you guys able, those of you who didn't have build support, were you able to add it? Yeah? Okay, great.
Is it also possible to... Oh, wait, never mind.
Okay, so we have 20 minutes or so. All right, we might just get something in here. All right, so then we want to go back to project settings, build settings. Is that what I said? Is that where we were? No. What?
Do anything with Player? Just click on it.
What? I'm sorry. Go back to project settings, edit project settings player. Edit project settings, and then player. And then you click on the iOS, and what you're going to want to do is you need to set up a bundle identifier. This is usually in the format of a reverse URL. You can see it's like .com default company .apollo demo. You can change that. I'm going to change, it doesn't really matter what it is. Did I have to set up on a company? Where do I do company? Oh, player up here at the top. Let's start with that actually. start with your company. Doesn't matter. Make up a company name for yourself. Have it be something unique. Don't copy mine. I'm calling mine CAAR Prog. CalArts AR Programming. Product name can be Apollo Demo. That's fine. All right, so now you can see down here on a bundle identifier, it's now changed this to com.carprog.apollo demo. It's not really important, but just make sure it's unique. I'm going to call mine, I'm going to rearrange this a little bit and just call it carprog dot test. No, dot Apollo dot demo. Just make sure that yours is different than mine. So don't use carprog, but it can be anything up here, and then you could call it Apollo demo, or you could call it something else. Just make sure you call it something unique from somebody else so that you don't have any bundle identifier conflicts, which I don't think would really matter, but it's probably just best to have something unique. And down here, we're going to want to click on, where is it? There's something in here. There should be, one of these checkboxes should say requires ARKit support. Yeah, right here. Requires ARKit support. And when you check on that, there's a warning that pops up that says ARKit requires iOS 11 or newer. Please target minimum iOS version to at least 11. So do all of you have at least iOS 11 on your phones? If you don't, that's another part of your homework. Get iOS 11 on a phone.
What is this under? Other setting?
Game player, yes. So click on requires ARKit support. And then here where it says, right above that, where it says target minimum iOS version 9, change that to 11. Okay, so that way this will not deploy onto a device that can't run it.
What did I put it on?
11. From 9 to 11, and has ARKit support required. Okay. One other thing. ARMS architecture. There should be something that says architecture. Where is that? Architecture. I know it's here somewhere. I think by default it says universal. There it is. Architecture. It's right before this scripting defined symbols, big gray bar. Here, architecture from universal. Change that to ARM64. It only works on ARM64 processors, but any of those phones that I listed, they all have ARM64 processors, so that's fine. Okay. Whew. Okay. Waylu, are you doing iOS or are you doing Android right now? Android? Okay. So let me go over Android with Waylu really quick. So for Android, so go ahead and for all you guys, that should be fine for that. But all right, so for Android, I'm going to copy this bundle identifier. If you haven't done a bundle identifier, just type in something here under package name. And again, I like to do, instead of doing the reverse, it doesn't really matter to tell you the truth, but I like to do the company name and then something having to do with this project. So this is called the Apollo demo. All right, doesn't really matter though. Android, you'll want to turn off multi-threading rendering. So somewhere here is multi-threaded rendering. Right here at the top is the first checkbox under color gamut. Yeah, turn that off because it doesn't support multi-threaded rendering. ARKit does not. And then down here, similar to them where they had to change to iOS 11 required, there's a thing that says, here it is, minimum API level. Jelly Bean is the default. You need to change that to 7.0 Nougat. Okay, because you have to have at least Android 7 to run AR Core, because it didn't exist on any of those earlier Android versions. Okay. Yeah, we already did that. Okay, so that's the player settings you need. There's no save button or anything on this. I think you just have to make those settings and then you can close this. And if you want to check, you can go back into it really quick, edit project settings, and it should have the same things you had still clicked in there. Yeah, great. Okay, now we need to do build settings. So go to File, Build Settings, and you're going to want to click on, for those of you doing iOS, you want to click on iOS and click on Switch Platform. Switch Platform. Okay, it takes a minute. It has to import some assets and stuff. Okay, switch save floor. Okay, and then go ahead and say build, not build and run, just build. And then at this point, you have this directory structure here. I like to add a new folder and call this new folder builds. So you have a place to put your builds, and just call this iOS and hit save. And then it should start building your project. Okay, and then for you, Wei-Lu, click on Android here and click on Switch Platform. And let's see, yours. Okay, do you have your Android device set up for developer yet? Have you ever put a custom application on your Android device? Okay, and so have you plugged into your computer and it recognizes that you're in developer mode? All right, well, go ahead and hook up your computer, hook up your device to your computer with your cable. And come on, go. Mine's still building the iOS version. As soon as mine gets done building, I can show you what you need to do, Wei-Lu, but say yes. Did you say build and run or just build? Okay. Great. So what happens when it builds it is then it'll create this iOS folder, and in here there will be an Xcode project. And you'll need to have Xcode properly set up to be able to run this Xcode project. Let me get Wei-Lu set up, and then I'll come back to you guys with this in a minute. Okay, so Wei-Lu, I'm going to click on Android, and I'm going to click Switch Platform. And, all right. And then I'm going to connect my phone. And hopefully this works, because sometimes mine gives me problems. All right, and so on Run Device here, you're going to want to make sure that it has your phone listed. If it doesn't, try hitting refresh. And mine shouldn't be giving me problems, but it is. Darn it. Nope. And you need to be able to have developer. You need to be able to see your phone in there to be able to actually build it onto your phone. If you don't, you need to go into settings let's see, settings, and when you go into settings and system, do you have an advanced and a developer options? If you don't, you'll have to enable this USB debugging. What? You can't find it. All right, so mine sometimes just gives me problems where it just doesn't want to recognize my device. It drives me crazy. Okay, now it should be working on mine. Yes, thank God. All right. So, see how mine now says it has Google Pixel in the list there? If you don't have your phone listed, then your phone's not set up correctly. Is yours in the list on Unity? Okay, so then you need to go, what is it you need to do? There is, let me go to the class website really quick. And under week 1, and under this video,
Assets window.
Shush, go to YouTube.
Now we can delete that prefab.
Shush. He has here in his thing, he has a guide for Android development here. Okay, so you have to enable USB debugging on your device, and the way you do that, it kind of changes from one device to another, but usually you should have something. Why is my, oh, it's control, there we go. Settings, you go to settings, about, phone, okay, and then somewhere down there you should see something that says build number. Down at the very bottom, mine is. And this is really funny. You tap on that build number like 7 times. Yeah, here it is. Enable USB debugging. To do this, find the build number in your device settings menu. That's the location. The location of your build number varies between devices, but for Android stock, it's usually in settings, about phone, build number. Can you find that in settings, about phone, build number? Build number, it should be like, mine is PQ3A.190705.001. Is there like a serial number? Here, let me look at your phone real quick. Let's go down to the bottom. About phone, status, model number, serial number, hardware version. Yours is called hardware version. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, maybe I hit edit. No, that doesn't work. Might have to look yours up. But for now, you could just build it for now. All right. You're gonna have to look up how to enable USB debugging on a Galaxy whatever. Okay. So for right now, Waylu, you can just, instead of saying build and run, just say build. Create a folder called builds and name it Android. Okay. All right. So for you guys, for iOSers, the next thing we need to do is open up Xcode or just launch this iOS. So you've built this. You should have a folder that says iOS, and if you click in there, you scroll most of the way down, there's something in there called unity-iphone.xcode project. If you double click that, it should launch itself in Xcode. Now in Xcode, you'll have to set up your accounts. So you, from the menu bar, select Xcode preferences to open the preference window. And now click on the accounts tab. And down here, you probably won't have what I have here, which is an Apple ID listed here. You probably might just be blank, right? You have one in there, great. If you have one in there, great. And when you click on it, you should see over here something that says your name, personal, team, and then it will either say free or user, depending on how old your Xcode is. What does yours say? User. Yeah, user's fine. A lot of the literature online says it free, and I spent so long trying to figure out what's the difference between user and free. There really isn't any. It's just what they changed it to, like in Xcode something or other, in a newer Xcode version. All right. So if you don't have your Apple ID listed here, click the plus icon and say you want to add an Apple ID, and then log in with your Apple ID here in this screen. You don't have an Apple ID, you can create one from here. But I think you guys all said you have an Apple ID. If you've ever downloaded an application on an iPhone, you have an Apple ID. Okay, so then you put it in there, and then once you have it in there, you should see your name, personal team, user, or role free if you have the older version of Xcode. Great. Next, over here in the hierarchy, you can click on Unity iPhone. And over here on signing, team, none is by default on mine. You might have automatic signing, might fill this in for you on an older version of Xcode. And mine, you have to manually put in your digital signage. And then as soon as you put your name in there on team, then it should work. Okay? And so then it should say signing certificate, iPhone developer, your email address associated with your Apple ID, and a digital signing certificate. Then up here, make sure that Unity iPhone is collected, and under the device, make sure your device is plugged in. Too many cables. Too many cables. There we go. I like that it's nice and tight, but it's kind of annoying. This one is so loose it falls out all the time. It's really annoying. All right, so plug yours in, and you should, why does it say no build devices? Maybe I have to unlock it. Yeah, there we go. Make sure your device is highlighted here. And then you can hit play, and it should deploy it to your phone. It'll take about 1 minute to 2 minutes to deploy to your phone. If you have errors that are stopping it from working, that will be something you'll have to figure out before now and next week. But as long as it's counting down its tasks, it should be working. Mine has a bunch of warnings, but I don't think it has any errors. Like it talks about deprecated things, but that doesn't matter. And running demo. There we go. All right, so mine's running now. Here, I'll show you what mine sees. So if I go to QuickTime Player, cancel, file, new movie recording. All right, so it was playing. I guess when I went to movie recording, it killed it, but it's called Apollo Demo, so I can launch it again. And it will say, allow access to the camera and say okay, and there's the camera, and nothing's here, and that's because we need to move the camera back, and then all of a sudden there's the cube, right? And it's just floating there in midair. And you can see it's got some errors. It's kind of jittering around a little bit. It works better on my Android than it does on my iPad. But I think once we do plane detection, it'll be more locked in space. And normally you're not going to have things just floating in space. You're going to want to actually put it on a plane of some sort. All right. So the reason why you didn't see anything is because it's spawned right where your device is, and so your device is inside of it right now. So if you back it up, you should see it. Okay? So we have about 10 minutes. I just want to try to explain what I want you to do for homework for next week. I would say bare minimum, if you didn't get this, what we just did in class working, get that working. What I would really like you to do is add something else to your scene. Add a couple of other objects. Primitives are fine. Let me show you really quick in like 2 minutes how you could do something like that moon. So instead of a cube here, I'm going to delete this cube, and I'm going to add, did it work, Kathleen? No? All right, so you need to figure out why it didn't work. It probably has to do with you not having the right version of something. So add a 3D object, a sphere. Oh my God, that's huge. All right, so again, I want to change the scale to 0.1. 0.1. Oh, it does work. Great. 0.1. All right, so now I have a sphere. Now I want a texture, and I'm going to texture that sphere with a material. And let's see, I had to make the moon. There was this website that had some nice solar system textures, and it was called www.solarsystemscope/textures. And if you just search for moon textures, you should be able to find this. Solar system scope textures. You don't have to do this for your homework. You can do whatever kind of texture you want. But down here, I can download the ultra resolution 8K moon texture, which I've already done. And when you have that in your downloads, mine here is called 8K moon. It looks like this. And I can drag that into my textures directory. And it takes a second to load it because it's a big file. And so there's the texture. I can't put a texture directly, can I? Oh, it does let me put a texture directly on there. Well, there's a quick way of doing it. Put a texture directly on there. But you'll notice that it's kind of a shiny moon now because it made some assumptions about what it did is it created this into a, it should have created this into a material that it's called 8K moon. So the better way of doing this is to create your own material. So I'm going to say over here, I'm going to go inside materials. Oh yeah, see there it did. It put it in there for me. And it created it called 8K moon. But you can, in here, you could say create material and make your own and call it moon. And over here, change the shader model from standard, which is kind of glossy and makes it look like a marble, to mobile, which is optimized for lower lifting processors, and diffuse. And then under texture here, it says none texture. You can say select, and now I can choose my 8K moon as the texture for that. And now if I choose that as if I apply that to the moon, it doesn't look all shiny. And now I could deploy this to my phone, and now instead of a cube, I'd see the moon, right? So make a moon, make a Saturn, make a Mars, make a dinosaur. You can get models from 3D Warehouse and put them in there. Whatever floats your boat. Something interesting, something we didn't do in class. If all you can get happening is deploying and getting a cube on your screen, I'll count that as a win. But if you have extra time, please try to do something interesting. But main point of this first assignment is just proving that you can actually put shit on your phone. All right. So if you need more help, please make time with me, and I'll help try to troubleshoot what's wrong with your system and what we need to do to make it work. Okay? Cooly schmooly. See you next week.